Welcome to the Colosseum, the heart of ancient Rome and one of the most impressive structures in history. Once upon a time, tens of thousands of spectators gathered here to witness gladiators, wild beasts, and spectacular shows through which emperors demonstrated their power. Today, we'll walk together along the same steps that Romans walked nearly 2,000 years ago. And we'll discover little-known facts, legends, and details that bring this place to life. So, let's begin our journey, moving on to our first stop. First stop, entrance by the Arch of Constantine, the Colosseum, or the Flavian Amphitheater, a symbol of Rome and its most famous landmark. Look to your right. There stands the Triumphal Arch of Constantine, built in 315 AD as a gateway to the Colosseum. Imperial parades and triumphal processions once passed through here. But let's start with the history of this place. The Great Fire of 64 AD burned for almost 6 days and 7 nights, destroying a significant part of Rome across 3 hills. Emperor Nero took advantage of the disaster and seized a huge portion of land, where ordinary people used to live, to build his luxurious golden house. It was a grandiose complex that drained the treasury and sparked a revolt, which ultimately led to Nero's suicide. After his death, Emperor Vespasian decided to erase the memory of the tyrant and gave the people a place for entertainment. On the site of the former pond, they erected the Colosseum, an amphitheater capable of holding up to 50,000 people, where spectacles brought entertainment to the masses. Architecturally, the arch is impressive in its scale, 21 meters high, about 26 meters wide, and over 7 meters deep. The Arch of Constantine became a sort of open-air museum. As craftsmen used spolia to decorate the facade, architectural and sculptural elements from monuments of earlier emperors, including Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. This combination creates not only artistic complexity, but also emphasizes the connection to the past that Constantine sought. Look up. Latin inscriptions are carved into the arch's pediments. They read, "To the Emperor Caesar Constantine the Great, Pius. Fortunate Augustus." This isn't just a name, but an entire title, reflecting the power and sacred significance of the ruler who united the empire and changed its destiny. Around the inscriptions are reliefs and bas-reliefs showing battle scenes, triumphal processions, gods, and symbols of victory. Every element of the facade was carefully designed to emphasize Constantine's greatness and his achievements. Interestingly, the Arch of Constantine is the last of Rome's triumphal arches to have survived in almost its original form. Despite the passing centuries, numerous restorations have preserved its magnificence. In the 16th century, some sculptures were damaged, but later restored. Second stop, the Colosseum's outer facade. Before you stands one of the most famous architectural jewels of the ancient world, the outer facade of the Colosseum, the Flavian Amphitheater, which became a symbol of the Roman Empire's greatness. This facade is not just a stone wall, but a masterpiece of engineering thought and aesthetics that impresses even today. The Colosseum was built between 72 and 80 AD. Under Emperors Vespasian and Titus, construction was financed with spoils from the sacking of Jerusalem in 70 AD, and about 70,000 Jews were enslaved and labored on the construction. This is connected to the origin of the expression pecunia non olet. Money doesn't smell, which relates to Emperor Vespasian's introduction of a tax on public toilets to replenish the treasury after this costly construction. Its shape is a giant ellipse, 188 meters long and 156 meters wide, nearly 50 meters high. The facade of this enormous structure is divided into 4 tiers. The The first three consist of repeating arches decorated with half columns of three orders. Tuscan on the first tier, more simple and massive. Ionic on the second, slimmer and more elegant. And Corinthian on the third, the most decorative and ornate with characteristic luxurious capitals. The fourth tier is a solid wall with Corinthian pilasters, decorated with small windows and bronze shields. In total, about 80 arches adorn the facade, each serving simultaneously as an entrance and exit, thanks to this architectural solution. The Colosseum could fill or empty in just 15 minutes, which became one of the first prototypes of modern stadium evacuation systems. The facade was clad in white travertine, which shone like a pearl in the sunlight. More than 200 statues of gods, heroes, and mythological characters stood in the arches, adding to the building's majesty. Unfortunately, over time, most of the cladding and sculptures were lost. Stones were used piece by piece for constructing other buildings. For example, St. Peter's Basilica and the iron clamps that held the blocks together were torn out for smelting. An interesting fact about the origin of the name Colosseum: there are two versions. The first, from the Latin colossus, colossal, simply emphasizing the amphitheater's enormous size. The second is connected to the 36-meter bronze statue of Emperor Nero that stood nearby, which was later transformed into an image of the sun god. The Colosseum's facade is not just an architectural work, but an example of harmonious combination of form and function. Vertical columns and horizontal arches form a rhythmic structure that creates an impression of lightness and dynamism, despite the structure's gigantic dimensions. Visitors are encouraged to carefully examine the facade from different angles, noticing the slots and holes in the stones where masts and ropes were attached for the velarium, a huge canvas awning that protected spectators from the bright sun. This unique engineering solution required the work of an entire team of sailors who controlled the awnings, movements using a complex rope system. This stop gives you the opportunity to grasp the scale and genius of Roman engineers and architects, who laid foundations that influenced the development of stadium architecture right up to our present day. Now, after getting acquainted with the facade, I invite you to step inside, where we'll see the most complex system of corridors, stands, and underground chambers, where the unforgettable spectacles of antiquity unfolded. As we continue our journey, if you're enjoying my free audio guides and appreciate that I'm helping you save money on paid tours, you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee through the Buy Me a Coffee service. It helps me stay energized and create even more fascinating stories for you. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming adventures. Third stop, interior galleries and entrance system. Welcome inside the grandiose amphitheater. Right now, we're standing at its heart, where not only the empire's might is embodied, but also the sophistication of ancient Roman engineering thought. Look around. You see an intricate web of corridors, staircases, and arches that forms the most complex seating and circulation system for tens of thousands of people. The Colosseum was designed to accommodate 30 to 50,000 spectators by the most modern standards. It's a whole stadium. To ensure safety and comfort, they provided 80 entrances and exits, evenly distributed around the entire perimeter of the building, of which 4 were intended for nobility, senators, and the emperor, and 76 for other citizens. Imagine, thanks to this system, the audience could fill or empty the amphitheater in just 15 minutes, speed and efficiency worthy of modern stadiums. Each spectator had a ticket indicating their entrance and seat. These were clay tokens with numbers, discovered by archaeologists, which determined the entrance and seating location. Above the entrances were letters of the Latin alphabet and numbers, which helped people quickly navigate and climb to their seats via 76 staircases distributed among the galleries. The seating system strictly followed social hierarchy, which was very important for Roman society. The lower tier, or podium, was reserved for the emperor, his family, senators, and vestal virgins. Their seats were separated from the arena by a high parapet that protected them from possible danger, and they were furnished with marble benches engraved with the owners' names. The emperor's seat stood out especially an elevated, marked place. The second tier was occupied by the equestrians, an influential class of urban elite. Their seats were more modest, but still prestigious. The third tier was intended for free citizens of Rome, and the uppermost level was reserved for the poor, foreigners, and women. They sat highest of all on wooden benches, often standing under the scorching sun. This separation allowed everyone to watch the show, but with different levels of comfort and prestige. The staircases and corridors were designed so that representatives of different social classes wouldn't cross paths.
So main event at the Colosseum is Gladiator.
It's worth noting that the gallery complex was multifunctional. Besides seating areas, there were trading stalls where you could buy cushions, food, and drinks, as well as souvenirs. Life bustled here, and the atmosphere hummed, even when there was a break in the arena. Of special interest is the velarium, a huge canvas sail stretched over the upper tier. It protected spectators from sun and rain. It was operated by special sailors, mariners from the Roman fleet, who rigged a complex system of masts and ropes for raising and lowering the fabric to create shade. This invention was a true engineering marvel of antiquity and still inspires awe today. The Colosseum's greatness is reinforced by the fact that its system of interior galleries has been preserved so well that even today, tourists can almost feel the scale and organization of this gigantic structure. Recommendation for visitors: carefully examine the arches and corridors, walk along the staircases, try to imagine how thousands of spectators rush to their seats with excitement and impatience. Photos and videos here turn out especially vivid, conveying the grandeur of the architecture and the dimensionality of the space. Don't rush. Stop for a minute at each arch. Feel the atmosphere of the past, because these walls remember the joy and fear of thousands of eyes watching the fate of gladiators and spectacular shows 2,000 years ago. Our next stop is the lower tier stands, where the most influential people in the empire sat. Gather your energy. Ahead is the arena, where real dramas and legends unfolded. Fourth stop, lower tier, seats of the elite. Welcome to one of the most honorable and significant levels of the Colosseum, the lower tier, or podium. This is precisely where seats were located for the most influential audience of ancient Rome, the emperor, his family, senators, and vestal virgins, priestesses of the goddess Vesta. These seats were distinguished by special comfort, separated from the arena itself by a high stone parapet that ensured spectators' safety from enraged animals or even gladiators. Special attention was given to the emperor's seat, which was elevated above the rest.
That way they develop a
This
taste for
throne was
people.
positioned in the center
Then a few
of
days
the
before the games, they'd starve them.
so the
That way
emperor
when they
could
come through the
observe
floor,
performances
and a
with
lion sees a
maximum
person, he'll
comfort
want
and
to...
honor. Senators' seats were marked with their names carved in marble, so everyone knew their rightful place on these marble benches, which were often equipped with wooden seats. The lower tier encompassed approximately 20 rows of stone benches and was surrounded by an elegant colonnade. Near it were for special entrances for nobility, which provided additional comfort and protection when entering and exiting. Just above was the first tier for influential equestrians, an estate, ranking below senators but still quite wealthy and respected. Further up was the tier for free Roman citizens, and the upper tiers were occupied by less privileged layers of society, craftsmen, merchants, women, and finally, on the very top wooden stands, the poor and slaves. Interestingly, it was precisely the social structure and sequential arrangement by tiers that reflected the strict and clearly established system of Roman society, established, hierarchical, and clearly demarcated by status. The poorer the spectator, the higher they sat, essentially far from the action under the open sun. Women were officially separated by an awning from men. Since Emperor Augustus had established such rules back in the 1st century BC, during intermissions and between fights. Trading took place in the lower tiers. Visitors bought flatbreads, olives, nuts, and even cushions to sit on and make the show more comfortable. Spectators cheered noisily and placed bets, and the stone steps filled with the lively, dramatic atmosphere of the city. The lower tier is a kind of penthouse of the Colosseum, the embodiment of the Roman elite. From where important decisions emanated and where politics developed, news was discussed, acquaintances were made. Here converged both social life and entertainment culture. For today's visitors, it's especially interesting to imagine yourself in the place of senators and the emperor, to reflect on those feelings that these people experienced. Sitting so close to the arena, in the thick of events and danger that could unfold literally just a few meters away. Recommendation: linger here a bit and carefully examine the preserved seats with carved names. Imagine how these benches looked in ancient times. Feel the contrast between the luxury of the lower tier and the crowded upper stands where ordinary Romans sat. Our next stop is the arena and underground chambers, where the most dramatic events took place, which we'll discuss further. Fifth stop, the arena and underground chambers. Welcome to the most dramatic and important part of the Colosseum, the arena and its underground halls. Here unfolded the main events of a 1,000-year history that immortalized this amphitheater in global consciousness. Notice the two gates of the arena, Porta Triumphalis, the gate of triumph for victors, and Porta Libitinensis, the gate of death, named after the goddess Libitina, through which the fallen were carried out. The arena has an elliptical shape measuring approximately 85 by 53 meters, and was bordered by a high stone podium about 4 meters tall, separating spectators from the most dangerous part, the place of combat and performances. Originally, the arena floor was wooden, covered with sand that effectively absorbed blood and concealed traces of battles. Look beneath your feet and around. It seems the Colosseum has always stood here, like a rock, but the Romans built it on the site of a drained artificial lake from Nero's Golden House, on complex, wet soil. To prevent the giant from floating, they laid beneath it an enormous concrete bowl foundation, several meters deep, which distributes weight across the entire perimeter, like the sole of a heavy boot. For load-bearing structures, they used travertine, and blocks were bound with iron clamps. Traces of these fastenings are still visible as neat holes in the stone. Inside, brick, tough, and special Roman concrete with volcanic pozzolana. It's light, strong, and works perfectly in arches and vaults. It's precisely this combination of materials and arch forms that allowed the Colosseum to withstand earthquakes and survive through the centuries. Beneath the arena hides another engineering trick, a complex drainage system. Once there was a lake here, so the Romans laid channels that diverted rainwater and groundwater. This same knowledge about water allowed them in the early years to partially flood the arena and stage. Naval battles, Naumachia. The underground system, or hypogeum, causes special amazement. An intricate network of tunnels, rooms, and cages where gladiators, wild animals, and equipment were kept. The hypogeum with elevators and cages was built later, under Emperor Domitian, who deepened the arena about 6 meters below ground level. This structure is an engineering marvel of antiquity. The hypogeum had about 36 mechanical lifts and elevators, operated by slaves, which allowed animals and fighters to be raised directly onto the arena, creating the effect of appearing from underground. The underground chambers included animal holding pens, rooms for gladiators, and weapon storage. It was through tunnels and corridors beneath the arena that fighters approached their fate, while beasts roared in cages, intensifying the atmosphere of fear and tension. For spectators' safety, the top of the arena was surrounded by iron grills with elephant tusks inserted. No less interesting is that in the early years, the Colosseum was used for staging naval battles, Naumachia. For this, the arena was specially flooded with water, and miniature fleets with real ships and crews performed on it. This testifies to the scale and technological sophistication of ancient Roman spectacles. Gladiators, key figures of these performances, were professional fighters. Many were former slaves or prisoners, but some voluntarily entered the arena for glory and money. They fought one-on-one or in teams until the last survivor. If a gladiator was wounded, his fate was decided by the audience, by raising fingers. The popular myth that a raised thumb meant pardoning, the defeated gladiator, doesn't actually correspond to historical truth. This myth arose from the famous painting by French artist Jean Leon, Garum titled Pollis Verso, meaning turned thumb, where spectators supposedly show thumbs down to doom a gladiator to death and thumbs up to pardon him. However, modern historians believe Jerome misinterpreted the Latin term and Roman gestures. In reality, a thumb pointed in any direction, up or down, signifies not salvation but an order to kill, symbolizing an unsheathed sword. Complete pardon of a gladiator was expressed differently. Spectators showed a clenched fist, which meant a sword in its sheath, that is, a symbol of mercy and preservation of life. The gladiator's fate in the arena was decided by the emperor or jury. Guided by the emotional reaction of the crowd, whistles, cries of mercy, or kill. Historians indicate that gestures and signs were more complex and didn't reduce to simply raising or lowering the thumb. Thus, the idea of ancient Roman Colosseum likes thumb up for salvation and down for death arose later and took hold thanks to art and popular culture, not ancient facts. This is a vivid example of how artistic works can influence perception of history, creating persistent but erroneous myths. Once a condemned man was sent to the arena, where a fierce lion was supposed to be waiting. But suddenly from the cage jumped not a predator, but an ordinary chicken, and the crowd exploded with laughter. This unexpected moment relieved tension and showed that occasionally genuinely comical stories happened in the Colosseum, despite all the cruelty of what went on. The Colosseum arena became a place where life and death intersected in magnificent but cruel spectacles. Here were held wild animal hunts, public executions, and the bloodiest battles, whose spectacle and tension amazed thousands of eyes. Over more than 4 centuries of the Colosseum's operation, according to historians' estimates, between 270,000 to 500,000 people died in its arena, mainly gladiators. Criminals condemned to execution, as well as organized public killings. Some more pessimistic estimates cite even higher figures. Among the victims were both professional fighters and participants in mass spectacular executions. Additionally, over 1 million wild animals were killed in the arena. Lions, tigers, rhinoceroses, elephants, and other exotic species brought from all corners of the empire to create impressive and cruel performances. The meat of these animals, as a rule, wasn't used. The main thing was the spectacular action. Statistics on gladiator deaths vary. Experts believe that approximately 1 in 5 fights ended in a fighter's death, though many performed repeatedly, since training and investment in them were substantial. These figures emphasize how bloody and cruel the performances were, while simultaneously being part of Rome's culture and politics. Visitors are encouraged to carefully examine the arena floor and underground chambers to feel the scale of organization and depth of Roman engineering genius. Listen to the echo. Imagine the crowd's noise and beasts' roar to sense the atmosphere of this enormous ancient theater of life and death. Our next stop is the Ludus Magnus, the school where these fighters trained and awaited their fate before entering the Colosseum arena. Don't leave the amphitheater. Approach the side from where, across the street, you can see a rectangular depression with ruins and a small oval arena. These are the remains of the Gladiator school. Sixth stop, Gladiator School and Ludus Magnus. Welcome to the ruins of one of the most important parts of the Colosseum, the Ludus Magnus. The Gladiator School where true heroes of the arena were forged. This school was the largest among the 4 that existed in ancient Rome, and became a place where life and death walked hand in hand. The Ludus Magnus was built by Emperor Domitian at the end of the 1st century AD, not far from the Colosseum, literally a stone's throw from the Grand Arena. Here fighters lived, trained, and spent their final hours before entering combat. Walking here, it's easy to imagine how in these small barracks, training grounds, and corridors, life bustled, filled with fear and hope. Architecturally, the school was a rectangular complex with long brick walls and rows of rooms that served as cells for gladiators. Every day, dozens of fighters shared small rooms, slept on simple floors, and trained in combat techniques on a specially equipped training arena, a scaled-down replica of the main Colosseum. Particularly interesting is the fact that the Ludus Magnus was connected to the Colosseum by a long underground passage. It was through this that gladiators emerged onto the arena to meet their fate before thousands of spectators. Imagine the wave of adrenaline and tension piercing a fighter at the moment of emerging from the tunnel's darkness into sunlight, into the thunder and light of an audience ready to watch his every move. Socially, the gladiator school was a kind of business. Fighters were not only trained, but also sold or rented out for performances in other cities and amphitheaters. Some gladiators became true legends. Their fans wrote graffiti about them on walls, admired their skill. The best among them even gained freedom, receiving a wooden sword, the ruddy symbol of a career's end. The gladiator Flama received his freedom 4 times, but returned to the arena each time. It's also known that gladiators enjoyed great popularity even among high society women. Their skin, sweat, and blood were used as aphrodisiacs and cosmetics, and arena stars had love affairs with noble ladies. Today, only ruins remain of the school, but it's precisely these that allow us to feel the energy of the place, sense the breath of time, and reflect on the lives of people who risked everything for glory, survival, or freedom. For visitors, it's important to carefully examine the preserved brick walls. Imagine the internal structure of the barracks and training arena, and also pay attention to the connection with the Colosseum through underground passages. They show how closely a fighter's life was tied to the arena. Seventh stop, the modern Colosseum and its legacy. Here we've reached the final part of our journey, the modern state of the Colosseum and its immense legacy. After thousands of years of withstanding time, earthquakes, wars, and changes, this grandiose amphitheater stands before us as a magnificent testimony to the history, culture, and engineering genius of ancient Rome. Today, the Colosseum is not just an open-air museum, but a symbol of eternity and a grandiose past. It serves as a reminder of the empire's glory, of those bloody but captivating spectacles that once filled these walls with life. Its appearance over the passing centuries has changed. Marble cladding and statues were lost, the facade partially destroyed, but the amphitheater's skeleton itself still inspires awe. In the Middle Ages, the Colosseum was viewed as a source of building materials, from where marble and iron were taken for cathedrals and palaces, including Palazzo Venezia and Palazzo Farnese, as well as churches. In the 18th century, there were plans to relocate a textile factory and saltpeter works here, but Pope Benedict XIV saved the Colosseum by declaring it a sanctuary. He took the Colosseum under protection and consecrated it to the Passion of Christ, considering the arena a place of memory for Christian martyrs. He ordered a large cross erected in the center of the arena and established a series of altars around it, symbolizing the way of the cross and the Savior's suffering. These shrines transformed the Colosseum from a place of bloody combat into a symbol of Christian penance and remembrance. Although the crosses and altars were removed in 1874, the tradition of venerating the Colosseum as a holy place continues to this day. And today on Good Friday, a papal procession of the Way of the Cross takes place here. You've probably noticed the cross by the arena. It reminds us how the meaning and perception of the Colosseum changed over the centuries. Restoration work continues even today. The work of preserving and restoring the structure is carried out with great respect for historical heritage and using the latest technologies to preserve the Colosseum for future generations. Today, scientists believe that approximately 2/3 of the structure's original volume has been preserved. As for its significance, the Colosseum has become an architectural and cultural landmark for the entire world. It inspired the design of many modern stadiums and arenas, becoming a symbol of the art of engineering and human passion for spectacle. For everyone standing before the Colosseum today, this fortress of history opens the opportunity to reflect on time, on life and death, on what we were and what lessons we can draw from the past. We recommend visiting the Colosseum Museum, located inside, where artifacts, restored elements, and interactive exhibits are collected that help better understand the amphitheater's structure and the life of its inhabitants. In the evening, The Colosseum is beautifully illuminated, and a walk around takes on an almost mystical character. Don't forget to look around. Near the Colosseum are located such jewels as the Arch of Constantine, the Roman Forum, and the Palatine Hill, which will complement your journey and allow you to see ancient Rome in all its fullness. My audio guides are free for you, and I create them with love. You get to save money on tour guides and still enjoy the journey. If it feels warm and pleasant to walk with me, you can treat me to a coffee through the Buy Me a Coffee service. And a like and a subscription are like sugar and milk. Without them, it's just not as tasty. Most importantly, tell me in the comments which places or topics you'd like to hear about in the next audio tours. Your opinion truly matters and inspires me. Thank you for being here with me.